Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics. This is the podcast that helps you understand the economic world happening all around us. Everyday Economics is brought to you by the Center Square Newswire service. I'm Chris Krug. I'm publisher of the Center Square, and Orphe Divounguy is my partner, and he's a PhD economist. So he's pretty smart. He's got some things going on. Good-looking guy, too.
You're just way too generous, man.
January 19th, 2026. It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, my friend. And you know, you write your Everyday Economics column weekly, and you actually led with MLK Jr. Day today in sort of, as a lead. And let me just read from what you wrote, because I like this. I think it's kind of interesting, an interesting way to look at things and also to kind of pause and have some consideration. This is what you wrote. The week ahead begins with Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a moment that invites reflection not only on civil rights, but on how economic systems function and malfunction when opportunity is unevenly distributed. The reflection is not merely philosophical. A substantial body of economic research shows that discrimination and segregation impose real measurable costs on economic output. And, you go on to say that economists have long argued that the barriers faced by women and Black Americans distort occupational choice, weaken incentives to invest in human capital, and misallocate talent away from its most productive uses. I like where you're going here. I mean, this is a conversation that's not often had, I think, in even-handed terms, right? So, this can become very political very quickly.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be. Let me give you a very simple example that for our audience here that will resonate, right? So let's start with in 1960, 94% of doctors and lawyers were white men. By 2008, the fraction was just 62%, right? There were occupations that basically it didn't matter how smart you were, as a woman or a Black American. It didn't matter if you had a PhD or a law degree. You did not get to practice law, and you did not get to do what I do, in fact, essentially today, which is talk to large audiences on TV, for example. Mm-hmm. It just didn't happen. Great paper, talks about this specifically and actually measures what's the impact. Well, if you know that, regardless of a law degree, you're not going to be able to practice law, you're less likely to spend or invest in getting a law degree in the first place. And of course, that means entire populations were left back regardless of their innate talent or abilities. They never went ahead and invested in getting the knowledge and the degrees, and they never, and even the ones that did never got to do the thing they reach their full potential, essentially. Great example from this paper. Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor faced this type of thing when she graduated from Stanford Law School in 1952. I probably wouldn't be able to graduate from Stanford Law School even if I tried, let alone in 1952. And despite being ranked third in her class, the only private sector job she could immediately get after graduating was legal secretary. Mm-hmm. Of course, we know now she's a Supreme Court justice. I mean, so, we know how talented and this is just an example of one, person, but this was somewhat true across the board, because of, right? So, because of discrimination, mm-hmm. In the past. Now, of course, discrimination has, things have improved. I'm not here saying things haven't improved. Things have improved over time, but they persist. How do we see that? We see it in the labor market still, where basically, research shows that, when economic growth slows, the first people to take a hit are Black Americans, and we're even seeing it right now. The the labor market has been slowing for the past year and a half or so. And in the slowing of the labor market in the past year and a half, the black unemployment rate increased. Black unemployment increased by almost twice as much as white unemployment since in the last year and a half or so. Right. And so and part of the research shows that basically, the pattern holds, it's true in the global financial crisis. They were last hired, first fired, last hired. That story holds still. And so, you're continuing to see this. It's still true today. It's less true than it was in the past, but still very much true. And it cost a huge amount. When you think about aggregate, the economy on aggregate, and you think about economic growth, if not all people are able to reach their full potential, you're essentially constraining economic growth.
Right.
And that's the problem, essentially.
So, just to pull up some statistics and, this is coming from a bunch of different directions. But the validating the numbers, in 1960, only 3.1% of black adults, had degrees. Today, nearly 20% do, according to this data. So, I mean, that's a pretty significant increase. Where are the gains being made and in terms of economic participation, and where are the gains not happening? I mean, that's a pretty good improvement, from 3.8% to 20%. I mean, you're talking about 60 plus years of an arc in consideration.
Totally. I think in healthcare, for example, in the healthcare sector, you're seeing some great improvements. The fact that you have, female black doctors and this is no longer, kind of you're seeing it across the board, but you're seeing it more so in some industries, some sectors than others, right? You're starting to see more and more black people in technology in the tech sector, which is a wonderful thing. So you're seeing kind of these barriers coming down and more people, right, investing, using their talent and investing in the things that they think they might actually be very good at, and where they are going to get a big return on their investment. And so you're seeing that across the board. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that, when we talk about MLK Junior Day, we are, sometimes people are quick to think about the negative, the things that persist, the unequal access, right? Even in housing, right? That persists today. But they forget that there's been some progress that's been made. And yes, progress has been made. Less discrimination in the labor market, for sure. More, improvements in terms of accessing housing across the country, for sure, right? Those are all wonderful things. In fact, some research shows that during the pandemic, the home values of Black Americans actually increased faster than many other groups, right? They really benefited from the surge in housing demand that took place. Of course, you had to be a homeowner first. And, I think where we still struggle is seeing access to home ownership, where basically less than half of Black Americans, Black households own their own home. Still a challenge. A lot has to do with, credit scores and not necessarily credit scores, but credit histories. When you look at the data, and you compare different racial groups, what you learn is that basically, a lot of black households just don't have a long enough credit history, and they get strongly penalized for that. The number one reason Black households get denied a mortgage is their lack of credit. And I think, there are some things that need to be done in terms of credit scores, and with credit scoring agencies. I know that, for example, the fact that people pay their phone bills on time and their rent payments on time and all that stuff should actually count towards their credit history, right? How else do you build credit, right? When you don't have parents that start you off on a credit card, when you're young, when you're a teenager or a young adult, right? And so it's really, really important that more is done in terms of making credit accessible to more people.
Well, I appreciate your thoughts as always. And, this is maybe a little bit different than the typical everyday economics episode, but, we are recording this on MLK Junior Day. And I think that was well worth the discussion. I appreciate your time as always, Dr. O. Make sure you follow Orphe, his column every Monday at thecentersquare.com and certainly across the Center Square Newswire. And make sure that you listen to Orphe and me and what we have to say each week on the Center Square Radio Hour.